give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analysts. It is the Draftdaq NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Podcast feed. My name is Corey Tullaba, and I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. Albert, how we doing, man?
We are doing. I was just saying to Corey before we started recording, I apologize for my voice, y'all. Stuff's going around. You know, it's the winter time. People get sick, and I'm testing negative so far for COVID, but I am sick. But I'm here because it's important for us, and it's important to us that we continue to give you guys the best damn content possible, free content possible. Yeah. So I'm here, and I'm ready to rock.
He's a trooper, folks. We do it for you. We do it for the listeners, the viewers. And today's a fun episode because I know, Albert, you always enjoy when we just kind of chop it up with no plan and we don't necessarily focus on one specific prospect because it leads to some, interesting discussions that we don't always get into. So it's the new year. It's 2023. This is the first show for us of 2023. And I thought that it would be a great idea to just get a temperature check on where is the overall draft stock of these 2023 NBA draft prospects. So as I usually do about monthly, I went through and took the draft stock based on, the big media outlets, ESPN, Bleacher Report, No Ceilings. It's free. Albert mentioned that earlier. Basketball News, The Athletic, Tankathon, Sports Illustrated. And I went, I took the averages and I put together the top 50 prospects draft stock for the 2023 NBA draft class. And this is the first update since the IPO that we did back in November. And the first one is always really interesting because it tends to look a lot different than that first one. That first one, a lot of it, when you do a preseason, it's, who do we think is going to take a leap as a returner? It's these highly touted prospects that these outlets kind of project to be the lottery. And as we know, folks, nothing is forever in the NBA draft world. It's fluid, and some of the guys that were in the lottery already have dropped out, which is why it's so important to remember, no matter how highly touted a prospect may be, things might just go wrong for them, and they might get off to a slow start. They might not be playing in the best fit, and they might struggle. And likewise, we got guys who are unexpected that pop up and, really help their stock with their play. So this is going to be a fun one. We'll go through the list. This list is also published already, if you're listening to this or watching, at NoCeilingsNBA.com. You can see where each outlet and their average stock price. So let's go through the top 5 of this update. Number 1 and number 2, no shock. It's Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson. And those guys are not going to change. I think for the remainder of this cycle, I think every outlet in unison has Wemby at 1 across the board, Scoot at number 2. At number 3, we have Amen Thompson. At number 4, we have Nick Smith Jr. And at number 5, we have Cam Whitmore from Villanova. That is the same top 5 from November. Nothing's changed. Things have changed for these prospects since, but nothing has changed as far as their draft stock goes. We know Nick Smith, Albert, is maybe out for the rest of the year. He's out indefinitely with a knee issue. We're going to see how that affects his draft stock, because while it may not hurt him with poor play, there may be guys who show out and leapfrog him. And then Cam Whitmore, it seems like he struggled a little bit recently.
Yeah, a little bit.
What do you think that is for him?
It's funny, Corey. I think thinking back to the pod that we did on him in the preseason, one of the big qualifiers that we had with him was the on-ball stuff, the shooting. We talked about, we praised so much of his athleticism,
Yes.
finishing at the rim, all that stuff. I just think at this point in his season where he had a late start as well, he just hasn't been able to accentuate or really show off the things that he's really good at, right? And there are a lot of different reasons for it. As we mentioned, he's had a late start because of injury. He's also playing on a interesting Villanova team. And so I think Cam Whitmore's evaluation for me specifically is something that I'm really going to try to pump the brakes on until the end of the season. I want to see him kind of continue to grow and blossom. I remember earlier today, Tyler Metcalf of No Ceilings NBA posted a really nice video of a little clip of Cam Whitmore making a really nice cut to the basket, showing off some of that athleticism and nuance and timing and, feel and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, like this is good stuff, right? But we need to see it more. We need to see it more consistently. And I really do hope that over the course of the remainder of the season that we continue to see that with Cam Whitmore, because you and I are really high on him before the season started. And I think it really might just be a thing where he needs more time.
I think that was perfectly well said. And I'm with you. I think we have to be patient with his evaluation. He is one of the guys that I am very, very excited to see up close. And, I think I'm going to have an opportunity to see him a couple of times. I'm going to go see him when they play St. John's, I believe at Madison Square Garden. And then at the Big East tournament, we'll get to see him again, if he stays healthy. I think, he had such high expectations coming into this season because he lit the net on fire during the summer. Just absolutely was a flamethrower. And it was a little misleading because, as we always say, you got to buy the form, not necessarily the percentages, right? And he's a guy who has a lot of, mechanical issues with that jumper, and he hasn't been hitting it. And I think that opens up a lot for him because he's not the shiftiest side-to-side ball handler, right? He has a good first step. He's powerful. He can go through you. He has really agile footwork when he does have a head of steam, so it's not like he's just a bulldozer. But that shot opens up a lot, and that Villanova team doesn't have, a ton of threats, and it could get really clunky at times. So he's a wait and see. I want to see him, make an impact as a playmaker a little bit too. A lot of people, and I think rightfully so. I know that on this No Ceilings feed, we've, heard a lot of our guys say to pump the brakes on kind of like the hate that Gigi Jackson gets for his lack of playmaking. And I think that's completely fair. And I agree with that. But I also do think there are playmaking concerns, field concerns, irregardless of how well, the 17, now 18-year-old Gigi Jackson's playing. But Cam Whitmore has had many of those same struggles as a playmaker.
I agree, Corey. I think really quickly before we move on, I just feel like the reason why this conversation and what you're saying is so relevant is because also the range that we're discussing Cam Whitmore in. If we're talking about a guy who's in the top 5 on somebody's big board, or may potentially even be taken in the top 5 of the NBA draft, then there are certain things that we're going to be looking for, right? Things, especially as a wing. Can you create? Can you shoot? All these things are really important. So the fact that he hasn't been able to showcase that until this point of the season is exactly why we're having this conversation. It's the range more than anything else, I think.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's get through 6 through 10. And this is where things, start to get a little bit interesting because things have shifted a little bit. We have Brandon Miller at number 6. He was out of the lottery. He moved up 9 spots. Now has an average stock price of 6.4, started out at 16.3. We have Ausar Thompson at number 7. We just did a really good episode, I think. I felt good about the Ausar Thompson episode last week. He did not move much. Cason Wallace has moved up to number 8. He moved up 4 spots. Keontae George is at number 9, and Jarris Walker at number 10. Not a whole lot of movement there, but we see Brandon Miller leapfrog people from the lottery and Cason Wallace make a play into this top 10 and as one of the more solid kind of safe picks Kaysen seems like he could be a guy who continues to rise. Something interesting with Kaysen, I ran a BART query with him, and it was very encouraging as far as who he kind of projected out to be based on, some of the rebounding, assists, scoring, 3-point stuff. It was Tyrese Halliburton and Davion Mitchell. And that was it for I think since 2015. So, he has some real worries, and I saw him in person against UCLA at the Garden. And, if you're looking for him to be the cog, the engine for your team, I think that you need to look in a different direction. But when I sit and I ask myself, can this prospect play in a conference finals? I think it's a resounding yes that Kaysen Wallace is going to be able to play in a conference finals.
No, I absolutely love what you said, Corey. Something that I thought about that I wrote in my notes as I was preparing for this pod. Kaysen Wallace, if you look at some of his limitations, right? He's not like an elite shooter yet, although I think he's a pretty decent one. The on-ball creation isn't gonna wow you or amaze you or anything like that. However, something that I was thinking was I feel like if he goes in the 8 to 14 range, that's a nice little range for him, because it's something that I thought about was if Orlando were to go grab him, and they have creators in Paolo and Franz, and I think Kaysen's going to continue to develop as a shooter, and I like his playmaking as well. I mean, it's not elite or anything like that, but just thinking about different scenarios, right, from 8 to 14, I think it's a very fair range for him considering what he offers on both ends of the floor. Right, we talked about when I wrote my article about him, and we talked about him as well. His floater game is unbelievable. Really nice touch on that. He's going to be a great defender. I think just overall, if you look at the whole package, obviously I understand the limitations, but from 8 to 14, that feels like a very fair range for him to go. And I think, as you said, Corey, he'll eventually blossom into a guy who, as you mentioned, can play in high leverage moments and positions. Oh, Corey, I think you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Let's talk about Brandon Miller quickly, because you made a lot of great points about Kaysen, and he's going to be just a really solid player with room for more. So Brandon Miller was a guy that the draft community was really divided on coming into the year. We were on the higher side. I know I had him top 5 coming into the year. That's kind of where he's cemented himself. He's made a major leap, but there are major concerns, right? He's really struggled finishing around the hoop. His 2-point percentage is really low, but he's been a flamethrower from distance, which was something I think people were concerned about coming into the year, because he was a killer in the mid-range, in high school AAU. But I was looking some stuff up, and he's up to 48% at the rim. Now that's not good, right? We literally just talked about how Amen Thompson is 50% at the rim on non-transition dunks. So you put in some transition stuff, Brandon Miller at the rim, 48%. It's not good, but it's trending up, because I believe it was at 43%. And now we're in conference play. So, I think that number is going to average out. It's going to increase. And one of the interesting things about that at the rim number, though, that I noticed was he's only assisted on 20-something% of those attempts. So he's self-creating almost everything at the rim right now. And I just don't always foresee that being a thing for him at the next level. I feel like when he plays off, when he's not the best initiator on his team, and he kind of sits back and gets into that secondary, tertiary role, and maybe you could use him coming off the ball, 45 cuts and, kind of corner back doors. And I feel like he's going to get easier looks at the rim. I think that Alabama should make a concerted effort to get him easier looks at the rim, so he doesn't have this massive load, because they have some guards who could play, and just work to get him easier stuff. And if they do that, and even if they don't, again, I think he's going to learn. He's a smart player. I think he's going to learn to get to spots in different ways and finish more efficiently as he gets stronger and fills out. But I think that there's a real opportunity for him just by getting not having to create everything.
No, I think you put it perfectly, Corey. I think he's a guy who, and it doesn't take a lot for you to notice his weaknesses, right? When you watch him on a floor, he's not an electric athlete. I don't think he has the tightest handle or shake or wiggle or whatever. So for him to be creating all of those opportunities, that high of a percentage of opportunities for himself, is a big reason why that percentage is so low. But Corey, as you mentioned, in terms of role and how he'll play, I think NBA teams are smart. They're going to watch that tape. They're going to see how he was struggling to get his own bucket like that. Or, it was arduous for him at the very least. I think teams are going to look at that and they'll just focus on what are his strengths? How can we leverage what he's good at and turn that into something that becomes effective for our team? So overall, I'm with you, man. He's still very high on my board. I won't lie to you. My top 5 has changed pretty drastically recently. Oh, Corey, I think I'm muted, but
that's what we like to hear. We love to hear that.
Yeah, I've been trying to catch up a little bit. I've been working life
in the lab.
So I've been in the lab. My top 5 changed kind of dramatically, but I still do have Brandon Miller at number 6 because of the things that you talked about. He's still a flamethrower from outside. I still think he's going to be a really good passer. I still love the size. We're talking about a guy who's pretty gigantic too. So I'm still there. I'm still really, really high on him. I just think, as you mentioned, we can't look at him in a vacuum and ignore the fact that he's playing on this Alabama team with the guards that they have in the situation that he's in.
All right. At number 11, we have Anthony Black. At number 12, we have Dariq Whitehead. At number 13, we have Gigi Jackson. At number 14, we have Grady Dick. And at number 15, we have Jet Howard. Now, we have a couple of big-time risers there. Most notably, we have Grady Dick, who jumped up 12 spots to land as the final lottery spot. And then Jet Howard, he jumped up 19 spots up to 15. And I think he has potential to rise even more. He had an average stock price coming into the year of 37.1. And that was shocking to a lot of us at No Ceilings coming in, because watching him at IMG, he was one of the guys that popped playing off of Jarris and Keontae. He's been playing well. I even think that tonight he grabbed more than 5 rebounds. So that's a big deal for him. I think if he was a guy, if he started hitting the boards a little bit, this is a guy who could potentially, and he still might go top 10. Dariq Whitehead. And this is a guy that I wrote about, called Drop Coverage at NoCeilingsNBA.com. Dariq has dropped 6 spots. He came into the year as a number 6 prospect on the draft IPO. He is now 12. And I think a lot of it is people being patient with him and not trying to dramatically drop him, because they know he's coming back from injury. They know that it was a foot injury. And you can't be on your feet with this lower body stuff. So he's a little out of shape. He's finding his rhythm, and this Duke team really sucks. They're just really not that good. Yeah. So I think they're being patient, but ESPN has dropped him to 20. Bleacher Report has him now at 16. So, and some of these outlets haven't, updated in the last week or so. So maybe he may have even dropped a little bit more. I feel like, on our next big board, we had him at 10 a few weeks ago. I feel like on our next big board, he's probably going to be a little bit lower. Do you think that Dariq is going to hit a stride where he can recover his draft stock? Or do you think that he's a guy who could have kind of like a Jaden Hardy type of situation where we're watching on draft night, we're sitting there and going, wow, another team passed on Dariq, another team passed on Dariq?
If Jaden Hardy is the example, then I would say I hope NBA teams don't do that, because I'm still really high on Jaden Hardy, and I think he's gonna be good. But
I think he'd go higher in a redraft.
Yes, exactly. But Corey, I'm with you. I think it's interesting. I think in a lot of ways it's very similar with Cam Whitmore. He's a guy coming off of an injury, and he's still trying to feel things out. And I think physically he's not 100% there yet. And there are things that he's still trying to feel out and kind of grow into. And as you mentioned, this Duke team is not the best team. It's not really enabling him or really
Tough watch.
Yeah, really tough. I'm going to refrain from naming names, but tough watch. Yeah, it's not always the most fun to watch. But overall, Corey, I'm one of the not one of the few, but I'm one of those people that you mentioned. I'm trying to hold on hope. I try thinking about what we saw in high school and the shooting and the defense and athleticism. Well, athleticism not so much, but I still feel
straight line.
Yeah,
straight
exactly.
line.
I still think there's something there, and I feel like he's another wait and see guy for me. I really do hope he figures it out. But as you mentioned, I think the percentages of him actually figuring it out within this season are very low because he's coming back from injury and because of the situation that he's in. So it's looking kind of bleak right now.
So it's not just him struggling at Duke. Outside of Kyle Filipowski, who has really risen a lot, he rose up to the 16 spot. That's a plus 21 jump. He was another guy that people had questions about. But when you look at the rest of the guys who are projected in this first round for Duke, Derek Lively dropped 9 spots from his initial ranking. Tyrese Proctor dropped 15 spots from his initial ranking. And I think that, that might even go into a free fall. He seems like he's going to be like a 2024 guy. Proctor he reclassified. So, that wouldn't be shocking at all. But it's ugly out there for the Blue Devils. So we do have to wait and see with Derek. But I tend to think that he's going to be a little bit lower than that the next time that we do this, because a lot of guys are playing well. Grady Dick, a guy with questions. His draft stock the last time we did this was 29.6, jumped up to 14.7. He is number 14. You and Steven covered Grady Dick when filling in for me. Do you think that it's justified that he is a lottery player right now?
I don't think I have him in my lottery, but I get it. Actually looking at my board right now, I have him at 18. Okay. So
not super far off.
Exactly. So it's not outlandish. It's not crazy for him to be in that range. And I get it. He's a guy that everyone's going to bang the drum and say that he's not just a shooter. And they're going to mention the fact that he's sneaky this and sneaky that. And he's going to be a guy that I think is going to be highly coveted by NBA teams, especially in that range between, the lottery and the late lottery, and then like the teens or the 20s, just because he is a big guy. He's like 6'7", 6'8", good size on him, can really shoot the ball, moves really well without the ball. So there's upside with him that I think teams are going to like. And then he has the foundation of being such a good shooter that it's easy to envision adding on to that and building on top of that. So I get it. I don't have him that high, but I totally understand why he'd be there.
Moving into this 16 to 20 range, and this range seems like we don't know where to put these guys, so this is where they're at. Kyle Filipowski at 16, who we talked about, major leap. He's played pretty well, above either at expectations or above, which for that Duke team, is a plus. Dylan Mitchell at 17. He dropped 8 spots from his initial ranking. We have Kalel Ware at 18. Terquavion Smith, who lit Duke up tonight, at 19. And Derek Lively at 20. So what are we doing with Derek Lively? Where are you at on the Tyler ×2 panic meter for Derek Lively?
On my updated board, I have him at 26.
Okay.
So I don't think that's crazy. I don't think it's ridiculous. Corey, I did see your tweet from the other night where you did talk about Lively and the situation that he's in. I acknowledge that. I agree with you. But also, like, it's been a tough watch at times, right?
Yes.
So I think having him at 26 on my board is not ridiculous.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, but then at the same time, he very easily could be a guy who gets drafted in the 20s and then ends up being a lot better than people thought he'd be, just because they watched a lot of his Duke tape and situation he was in. So I'm not in the freak out panic, all the way on the other side of the panic meter, but he hasn't played well, plain and simple. And I'd like to see him play better, but there's still some season left, so he could play better, but that situation once again. So what am I saying? He's probably going to stay the same.
I think he's the guy that's hurt most by this situation, right? Like, he's a guy who needs to be set up. And even the people that I think thought that he was going to shoot it a little bit, he still needs to be set up for those shots. It's not like he was hitting those shots off the bounce, right? He was knocking down shots, either like spacing the floor and pick and pop situations. So, and that's mostly because he was playing next to like Jalen Duren in the EYBL, who's manning the paint, and he was kind of serving as a floor spacer. Whereas now he's kind of playing that big man spot, and Kyle Filipowski is spacing the floor. But they don't have a point guard that can get him the ball. He, I think, in an NBA context, is going to be a guy you hit for lobs, runs the floor in transition, is a rim runner, and just scores on garbage like offensive rebounds, right? He could still do that part at Duke without those guards, because there's a lot of garbage to clean up on this team, but he's not really going to be getting a lot of these easy baskets that he needs to get, and I think he will get with more spacing and better playmaking at the NBA level. I think defensively he shows some pretty good stuff, and he's I think where he needs to be defensively. We knew about the motor issues. We knew about that. That was a concern coming in. And we did an episode on him in the preseason, and we broke down, we were concerned about that. And we were like, we're not as high on this guy as most people are, but he's kind of playing up to my expectation, because I watch his team and I just go, yeah, he could be more assertive. Sure. And that would help, but there's not much he could do out there on like a team like this who lacks consistent shooting and playmaking. It's ugly. So I think he's a guy who probably is also going to continue to drop a little bit. Bleacher Report, he's got a wide range right now. Bleacher Report had him at 28. The Athletic still had him at 14. So obviously there are, differences of opinion. I think we dropped him to 24 on our last update, but he has enough talent, I think, that he is a first round guy, regardless of this situation. And we can't overreact, because we have to project. And Khalil Ware, I think, is in a pretty similar situation himself. He showed maybe more flashes of the things we were hoping that he would see, but he hasn't really done anything to drop his stock too much. Dropped a little bit, but not a ton. And I think a lot of it is because other people moved up. But Terquavion Smith, he's a guy I could see rising. He's a guy that I could see having a stretch where it's just like, oh man, he's shooting 43% from three on 9.5 attempts a game over this stretch, and he's averaging 24 points and 6 assists and 5 rebounds. He's getting to the line, and he could have a stretch. He can go on a heater. He's a guy I would look out for as a possible riser.
No, I get it. Our very own Evan Wheeler wrote an incredible feature on him for No Ceilings NBA.
Evan the GOAT.
Yeah, Evan the GOAT. And highlighted a lot of his strengths and the things that he's good at. And he also mentioned some current NBA guys that come to mind, like a Jordan Poole, right? And you look at a guy like a Jordan Poole or a Bones Highland or whoever, and you have these kind of like medium-sized guards who can really light it up and have like a microwave type of style game. And you can understand. Even a guy like Malik Monk, look at, he's playing well for Sacramento, and he's a key part of their redemption arc or whatever, however you want to characterize what's going on in Sacktown. But
awesome stuff is how I would characterize it.
Yeah, light the beam. But I get it. Like, it's those types of players are intriguing, right? That can really score and can, do stuff with the ball in their hands. So I get it. I'm still not like crazy high on him. I still have him at 19 on my board. But I get it. And teams are going to like him. He's fun to watch.
You were right in line with consensus there. So as per usual. All right. 21 through 25, interesting group. Chris Murray, 21. Rayon Rupert at 22, just returned from injury. Bryce Sensabaugh at 23, an interesting name who is new to this list and jumped up all the way to 23 after not being listed in the preseason. We have Marcus Sasser at 24, who has increased his stock a little bit. And then at 25, we have Max Lewis, who was not listed the first go around and has jumped up to 25. So a lot of interesting names there. A lot of guys I really like. I'm seeing Chris Murray live on Sunday. I saw him last year. He is putting up a sneaky, underrated season. And obviously, top 21 draft stock is pretty good, right? That's pretty solid, especially for an upperclassman. But it seems almost like there is some kind of like overcorrection because Keegan went 4, and people are like, well, we think he's worse than Keegan, but like he may not be playing that much worse than Keegan was. And we know that, I think if you redid the draft, I think there's a few guys who would go ahead of Keegan, even though Keegan's having a good rookie year. But I feel like Chris Murray is a sneaky guy who could rise because there's a few outlets that are still sleeping on him a little bit, but he just keeps producing. And as we get into conference play, this is when, if he keeps it up, just like Keegan did, this is when we could start going, oh, Chris Murray? Lottery?
No, I 100% agree, man. And, I'm one of those guys, and maybe others are out there too. But
I am too.
lefties are so pretty to watch, and I like watching lefties shoot the ball. And, I get it, Corey. I think if we went back to a year ago and looked at where Keegan was at the same time, I'm sure he wasn't in the top 5, right? He also had to really raise. Yeah. Correct. He really had to raise his stock to get to where he got to. And Chris Murray is similar situation. Now, he doesn't have his brother as a running mate anymore, but he is, as you mentioned, having a very underrated, very, kind of under the radar, very good season. And that's a really encouraging thing. And so I think for me, give me a second. I have him currently at 23, right? And I think he very easily can move up on my board as well, just like you said, because I don't think he has the same creation upside as his brother does, but he still does a lot of great things on the floor.
Yeah, and maybe he doesn't need to have that creation upside for what he's going to do in the NBA to still have a really effective year. Rupert just returned, so he's a wait and see guy, but he has such intriguing tools. It's good to see him back because he's a guy that could shake things up. Bryce Sensabaugh, a guy who I was really looking forward to seeing live when No Ceilings covered the CBS Sports Classic at the Garden, but it took me just so long to drive into New York City from Long Island, which is like not that long of a drive, but I hit so much traffic that I missed that entire game. Luckily, when it's overtime, and I didn't miss any of the Kentucky UCLA, but he's took a massive jump. And honestly, if No Ceilings, we had him at 40 on our last update. I think if we did it again, he'd probably be higher. We're almost, ruining the curve here because every other outlet has him, in that like low 20 range. So he seems like he's a guy that another guy like this guy could rise. Freshman comes out of nowhere, shows these really intriguing skills. I guess similarly to last year's Ohio State guy in Malachi Branham, who is doing kind of similar stuff, but still has some question marks. So people don't want to completely overreact to it. But when you go through a lot of his advanced stats, he's having a really impressive freshman season that almost feels like is going a bit under the radar, even though he's been on the tip of a lot of, the draft community's tongues. But I know you're a body guy. What do you think of these weird body guys, like a weird body guy like Bryce?
Weird body guys scare me always, generally. I like my Greek Adonis athletes generally. No, but last year we had a very similar conversation when we talked about Harrison Ingram and I really did not like the shape that he was in. And I had a lot of question marks. But Corey, I think overall this range is a very interesting one from 21 to 25 on this list, because I think a lot of these guys can end up moving and shaking and end up in really different places than where they are right now. I mean, you mentioned Sensabaugh. Yeah, Sensabaugh very easily, if he continues to play the way that he's playing and continues to grow in the role that he's in, he can easily move into the late teens, maybe even the lottery conversation. Who knows, depending on how things go. But we mentioned Chris Murray. We mentioned Rupert, who in his first game coming back from injury looked pretty damn good. And then Max Lewis. Like I hate to kind of spoil it here, but I moved Max Lewis into my top 10.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I really, really enjoy watching play basketball now. And as we mentioned, I saw his worst game live and I still liked him. So I think this range overall, whether it's Sensabaugh or Rupert or Murray or Lewis or Sasser, this is a very volatile group that I think can end up in a very different place by the time the draft comes along.
Absolutely. And I'm with you on Max Lewis. I have him at number 8 right now. I absolutely love his tools. I love the fact that he's producing at this level, made a jump, and he's still raw. Like, this is a kid who took an untraditional path to get to college and missed out on a lot of important developmental time, and is producing producing in a big way. The kid is ridiculously efficient, but it's not just about the numbers. The eye test backs it up. Like, this is a kid who really has like NBA movements and NBA shot making, and he could play on or off the ball. He's got a little bit of passing flair. I think he is not always perfect defensively, but shows a lot of promise and has a lot of really intriguing flashes on that end. I mean, I get it. He goes to Pepperdine, and you know, that right there is probably going to hurt him a little bit because he's not always facing the best competition on a night-to-night basis. But I promise this is a kid who is going to rise significantly up the board. I never want to say it would shock me if he wasn't a lottery pick. Like, that wouldn't shock me. The fun of the draft is that it's completely shocking almost every year. But he has some tools. He has some tools, and again, look at the film, look at the stats. Kid's legit.
Yeah, he's silky smooth, dude. And something that I mentioned before, when I saw him warming up against UCLA, he just refused to miss a shot. He was allergic to it. Everything was going in, and the shot looked so pretty.
Oh my God.
He was totally locked in. The handle looks fantastic. I think the playmaking is getting there. I just, yeah, in something, Corey, that you mentioned in our group chat, even the defense has started to look better recently. And I think if you kind of put all of that together, yeah, like, competition is competition, but at the same time, like, just eye test wise, you watch this guy move around on the court, you see the way that he moves with the ball in his hands and the way that his jump shot looks, and then you look at the numbers, and like the package is fantastic with him. So I literally could not stop myself from moving him in my top 10, and I'm pretty confident that he might end up staying there. Like, he is just so pretty to watch as a basketball player, and I think it's well deserved that he's moving up boards.
100%. Shout out to everybody watching live on YouTube. Make sure you smash that like button for us. We are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to hit the back half of the top 50. And just like that, we're back to break down the rest of the top 50. All right, coming in at number 26, City Sissoko, the G League Ignite. Nikola Durisic of Mega at 27. Colby Jones at 28. Jordan Hawkins at 29. And Terrence Shannon Jr. at 30. What jumps out at you there?
Hawkins. I love Hawkins. He's a guy that
you're an OG Hawkins lover.
Yeah, I had him on my boards last year too.
Yes.
And he's a guy that was really young last year, and he had his bumps in the road, and this year he's looking more mature, and he is a Turquavian type of guy, a really electric shooter, scorer, athletic, just a guy who kind of jumps off the screen when you watch him, and a guy that is really hard to not notice because of the way that he shoots, the way that he moves, the things that he's doing on the court. It's palpable that you can feel his influence on the court. So Hawkins is a guy who's higher on my board than here at 29. And Corey, I did want to hear you talk a little bit about Kobe Jones, a guy who I've really enjoyed watching recently. Big kid, 6'6", right? Playmaker. He has good feel to him, but wanted to hear your take on him because he's a pretty interesting guy to watch.
All right, I'll first I want to quickly touch on Hawkins because I have him at 17 right now.
Nice.
He's a lot of fun. He is a lot of fun. His 3-point shooting volume is bordering on the occult right now. It is absurd. He has one of the smoothest jumpers ever. He can shoot it off movement. And when I think about like, okay, what can this guy do at an elite level in the NBA to get him on the floor? I think he's going to be able to knock down shots and shoot, whether off the catch or off movement. And he's going to, I think, be able to defend. Now, he's not going to be this switchable up and down the lineup guy, but when you're talking about guard positions and maybe some threes, he competes. I think he's got good length and his body will fill out. And I look at that as like a baseline, and then I go, all right, what if he puts together a couple of, dribbling improvements, some improvement in the self-creation space. And this is a guy who could, really be a sleeper. Now, I'm not looking for him to be some kind of, playmaking, initiating, high-level guy, but as a complementary piece who doesn't need the ball in his hands to still get his, those guys are valuable. And UConn's winning a ton of games. He's a big part of that. I cannot wait to see him live. Colby Jones, I was going to see him live last week, and I played it all wrong, man. I was on the Game Time. I was on the Game Time app. Tickets were like $20. They're playing in Queens at St. John's. And I was like, all right, $20 is decent. I'll pay that price. But you know what? I'm going to wait until the day of, because I bet they dropped to like $10. And I was trying to save $10 for what? For nothing. And game day happens, and all of a sudden tickets are like $95 to $120. And I was like, I am not going to that arena, which has some of the worst acoustics out of any arena you can go to. As much as I love it and been going there since I was a little kid, I was like, I'm not spending $100 to go watch Andre Curbelo and Colby Jones. So I will see, Xavier in the Big East tournament and whatnot, and at another time. But Colby Jones, man, I think Rucker wrote a great piece at NoCeilingsNBA.com about him, about his versatility. He's a guy that he's just going to do what is asked of him at the next level. Would it be great if he just let it fly as confidently as Jordan Hawkins? It would be tremendous. But he's going to continue to work on that. And he's going to make smart decisions with the basketball. He's going to defend multiple situations. He has the height and the strength and the length to compete at the next level. He's a guy who rightfully has entered this conversation because he wasn't listed on the first one and has moved up to 28. So that's a very big rise from where he was previously when we did the top 40. He's just a guy who's going to play winning basketball, and it wouldn't shock me if he's contributing very early in his career, because he is like the consummate glue guy that you want next to, your superstar players at the next level when he fully becomes himself as an NBA player.
No, I get that, man. And I love that he's moving up the board like that, because when I watched him play this weekend, I was like, man, this guy he does good stuff, and he's making winning plays. And I like the size on him, and I like the way that he feels so in control all the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like he's being rushed or he's ever panicking or freaking out. Just a guy who's very mature and seems to know, he's very sure of himself and seems to know what he needs to do to, lead the team to victory. So a guy that I recently got into more and I've really enjoyed watching.
And if you like good basketball, why not, right? Moving on to the next batch of 5, we have Julian Phillips at 31, Mr. Hot Honey himself. We have Taylor Hendricks entering the mix, unlisted on the first one, at 32. The UCF big man went to UCF for a semester, so shout out to UCF. Coleman Hawkins at 33, who, if you were listening to this, you may or may not have already read our own Nick Agar Johnson's piece on Coleman Hawkins that came out on NoCeilingsNBA.com. We have Julian Strother at 34, guy you wrote about last year, and then Leonard Miller at 35. So let's talk about Julian Phillips for quickly. And we covered him. I still have him like top 20, but because I love the defense, I still buy into the shot. I love how effective he could be getting to the free throw line and finishing and cut. But he's got to score a little bit, and I'm wondering, because I would still take him in the top 20, but I'm wondering is he possibly a guy who comes back to school?
It's definitely possible. I actually have him exactly at 20 right now on my board. So I'm right there with you, but I wrote about him. We covered him, guy that you put me onto early on, a guy that I really enjoy watching play basketball. And Corey, yeah, he could go back to school, but in my opinion, I feel like he's shown enough and will continue to show over the course of this season that he's a guy that NBA teams should bet on, because of not just because the measurables and whatever, but like you said, like he's a very gifted and talented player who just needs some time. Wow, I keep saying that today, but it's true. He's one of these guys who you have to look at as a developmental type of guy. We talked about it ad nauseum before. Like, we really believe in the shot. I think the shot looks good and will only get better. And so if that's the case with his size and length and everything that he can do on the court, he's a guy that I think NBA teams will feel very comfortable taking in this range, anywhere from 20 to 30, right? Or even in the second round. And I think that's not a bad thing for him, right? He could end up playing a good amount he could be on a two-way, or I don't know, end up playing a lot in the G League, whatever. But
yeah,
he's a guy that will be good, in my opinion. So he just needs time.
Good measurables. Leonard Miller at 35. Now, is Leonard Miller the guy who is, going to read the second level of the defense better than anybody? No, I think that would put a little too much dip on his chip there. But he is an intriguing guy that, I think is on this G League Ignite team is like a little bit like Julius Randle-ish. I think there's enough there that he's shown in the G League, even though the shot is still not there. And gosh, does it look ugly at points, that I think a team is going to take a first round flyer on him. He has height. I think he's got, some defensive versatility. He can board. He's got good touch closer to the basket. And he does have some, passing chops, even if you're not letting him run that offense. Have you come around on Leonard Miller at all? Because I know a lot of us outside of like Maxwell have kind of had reservations about him.
Yeah, I'm still kind of not there. I saw him. I had the great opportunity to see him live in Vegas, playing with the G League Ignite. And as you mentioned, Corey, the shooting is really rough to look at and to watch. But he was really athletic. Watching him in warmups, he threw down some wild dunks that were really, really cool to look at. But I'm with you. I think the defensive versatility is awesome.
What was his body like? Because it seems like he's filled out a little bit this year.
Big time. So compared to what we saw in all the other film we saw last year before he got to the G League, he's putting on muscle. And, like in between the game or at these games, they have these, like, the OTE does it, G League does it. They do these little, like, hits of, like, short interviews with these players. Yeah. And they did this little thing with Leonard Miller and how, like, he's changing his diet, and being in the G League is enabling him to eat more, maybe not eat more, but to focus his diet, and he's working out more and all that stuff. And it showed. His physique was awesome, way better than I was expecting. So also, it's been a couple of months, so maybe my memory is leaving me, but no, I was really impressed. And but I still, I don't know, Corey, I'm not there yet with him, but things can change, right? We still have some time, but I still have a lot of reservations with him.
Have you watched any Taylor Hendricks yet?
I have.
Okay.
I have. I'm very confused by him.
Okay.
I do not want to throw shade or hate at his game, but I don't know if I'm like a huge believer in his jump shot. I like it. I do. I like it, but I need to see more. Is kind of how I feel. I don't know why. And Corey, like I've been this way with different guys. Like Devin Vassell was a guy that I really struggled with. Halliburton was a guy that I struggled with. But with Hendricks, like I watched this guy shoot, and yet I have him at 34, which is not bad, right? We're pretty fair. So I think he's okay. I want to see more. I'm gonna reserve saying anything definitive until like I actually do my deep dive on him.
Yeah. So the shot, it seems a lot like his body tilts to the left because he's a little bit like upright in his stance.
He looks skinny when he shoots.
He gets skinny when he shoots. And I guess the one positive is that, I mean, he's already tall and he has a high release. So because he's not, getting too much on the lower half, like it's a pretty high release, hard to, contest. But I think when you have like high level defenders, it's maybe a little bit less easy for him to get it off. He threw up a funky shot in that Houston game that like hit the top of the backboard. Although he played okay, his defense I think is good, but it's not like let me freak out about it good, even though he has like good shot blocking instincts. I'm in wait and see mode with him. I want to see the entire year. He's interesting. His numbers are intriguing. He's got like a good physical profile, and I don't think the UCF team is like indicative of the type of players he will be playing next to as a complementary piece at the next level. But I am in wait and see mode, but he wasn't listed on the first one. He's at 32 now. So I think that a lot of the outlets are in wait and see mode because his range is anywhere from 21 to 47 right now to not even being listed at Basketball News. So he's a guy that there's a lot of intrigue with, but some patience is needed mostly. At 36, we have Jalen Wilson. 37, to my dismay, we have Jaime Jaquez Jr. At 38, we have Tyrese Proctor. At 39, we have another new entry with Noah Clowney. And at 40, we have Amani Bates. Now, Tyrese Proctor dropped 15 spots to 38. Again, if you ask me, he's probably not going to be on the next iteration of this board. ESPN has him at 68 on their rankings. So I think he'll ultimately potentially be a next year guy. Amani Bates. There is something there. Now, this should not be shocking because he was literally on magazine covers as the second coming. But he, I think we were all a little dubious about his decision to go play at Eastern Michigan. And it seems like it's the right choice. He's getting to show off what makes him him. He's showing some significantly impressive shot-making ability. His handle looks tighter. Still can't find an open teammate for the life of him. Has tunnel vision. I think he plays with passion. He competes defensively, even if I don't think he's, a very good defender. I think he's competitive. I'm just watching him. I'm like, if he could be tall Malik Monk type of guy, heat check guy, like he could shoot it off movement. He doesn't need to self-create, but he can if you give him the rock. There's something fun. He's had good games against real competition. He's kind of more of a fun watch than you would expect. And I saw him live last year, and I was like, this is not a fun time.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Penny trying to turn him into a point guard was not the best idea. Wasn't really working there. But he's had an interesting story, Corey. He's been on YouTube highlight mixtapes since who knows, forever, right? Since the start of YouTube, who knows? But the kid he's had a really interesting road and path to where he's getting to right now. Had some off the court stuff early in the season, and now he's playing for Eastern Michigan, and he's putting up numbers, and he's playing an electric brand of basketball. But as you mentioned, Corey, like, yeah, there have been improvements, but I think he's in this range for a reason. I also believe that an NBA team might just take a gamble on him and take him like in the top 25, maybe. Who knows?
I could see it.
Yeah, it's very, very possible. But also, like, I don't think it's crazy if our valuation for him is in this spot either. is how I feel. But we may end up keeping him in this range, maybe 35 to 40, but he could definitely go like 25 to 30 once the draft rolls around.
He wasn't on the first iteration of this. I think most people had kind of given up on him as like a need to draft this guy, but I think he's going to get drafted. Like you said, it wouldn't shock me if he was drafted in the first round earlier than people expected. It also wouldn't shock me if, people were a little bit scared off by some of the maturity stuff and he doesn't get drafted at all. But I think he's an NBA player. Noah Clowney is the guy that stands out on this list to me. Obviously, anybody who listens to us knows that we love Jaime Jaquez Jr., and I watched him put on an absolute footwork clinic at the Garden recently. You've also seen him live this year. But Noah Clowney, you know what? He's on this Alabama team. That's a lot of fun. He's a guy that kind of came out of nowhere. Maxwell wrote a great piece on him this week. And if you told me that he was like one of the Mobley brothers, it kind of wouldn't shock me. Like, I feel like he kind of has a similar build and movement pattern to them. The percentages aren't there yet, but I think the shot looks good. And he's starting to shoot it a little bit more confidently. He's got good touch. I like the defense. I like the measurables. I like this kid. Noah Clowney's good, man.
Yeah, I don't hate him. I don't hate him, Corey. It's a fair thing to say.
I think he's going to rise.
Yeah, no, and he should. Corey, people may hate me for this, and I'm not saying they're identical, but watching him shoot reminded me of Jaren Jackson Jr. a little bit. And once again, they're not identical in their form, but it reminded me a little bit of his form. Watching
the
him
follow
shoot.
through.
Correct.
Follow through.
And I think, if he, as you mentioned, if he's going to shoot it and continue to shoot it and the percentages go up and he continues to play good defense and he has good size, why not? Right. He very easily could go in the first round. Right. So I think it's going to be something interesting to watch. And I really do hope that I really hope he just continues to shoot the ball. There's one game I was watching. He put up like 5 or 6, I don't remember, like a good amount of threes. And I was like, hey, man, do that. That's good.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid.
Let it fly.
Yeah, you have the form. Keep doing it. So maybe he just continues to blossom in that and in confidence, and he puts up more. And then NBA teams are going to be like, damn, like we have a stretch big here who is pretty damn talented. So could happen.
Yeah, I think he's a top 20 guy, most likely. At 41, we have Jalen Clark, another UCLA guy. Jordan Walsh at 42. Jalen Clark, by the way, was not on the first list. He's a new entrant. De'Ron Holmes at 43, Adem Bona, another UCLA guy at 44, and at 45 we have Terrence Arsenault from the Houston Cougars, another guy who was not listed who is making his debut. Jalen Clark is the name here, right?
Oh yeah, big time. Guy that I've seen a couple times. And Corey, I just want to say something. I think it's really interesting that we've had Jaquez, Clark, and Bona before even a sniff of Amari Bailey, which is unfortunate for him, and seems like a guy who's going to need more time, whether it's coming back to UCLA or going elsewhere. But Jalen Clark, in my opinion, fully deserves to be in this range because he's been playing incredibly impactful defense, which has led to a lot of really good offense and easy offense, and a guy who you feel every time he's on the court. So I think it's very deserved for him to be in the spot.
So Jalen Clark's interesting here, and I wonder if it's people going, I still need to wait and see, because his advanced numbers are like off the charts. Like, I think his his plus minus was like in the Zion range or something crazy ridiculous like that. Like, he is having a massive influence on these games. When I went to see him live, absolutely popped. You wrote a fantastic piece about, how he plays, like Ed Reed on the basketball court because of how well he reads these like passing lanes and how he plays defense. When I watch him, I go, I'm a Bulls fan. I've seen Javonte Green have a massive impact on the floor for the Bulls, who remain one of the most frustrating teams ever and gave up 71 points to Donovan Mitchell, which was not fun for me to watch, but I enjoyed his performance. But watching Javonte Green, I go, Jalen Clark could be that. If the shooting translates, Jalen Clark could be that. And if he's having this massive impact, then I don't care. I don't care. He's a junior. What are we doing here? If he's a guy that's going to be an impact guy, when we look back on this draft, are we going to go, why didn't this guy go 25 spots higher? Now, I get it. I think positionally, you go, what position does he play? Because he's the height of a shooting guard, right? But his game is really more tailored, I think, for that swingman position, like that 3-4 swingman position. So I guess the question becomes, like, do you think he can guard up that much?
I think fours are going to be difficult for him. I think he's got a good frame, really good length, incredible instincts, obviously, like we talked about. Really disciplined defender as well. But fours are going to be difficult just because of size. But then again, Corey, like we're talking about an NBA now where, there's so much versatility that depending on the team, depending on the matchup, maybe he can guard fours. So I think overall the point that you're trying to make about him is that he offers so much versatility that you have to consider him with one of your picks.
Yeah, that's I would bet on him. If I was a team and he was available in this range, if you're a veteran playoff team who needs an energy guy who could buy into a culture and be a contributor and do things, I would bet on that. All right, at 46, we have Baba Miller making his debut. At 47, we have Reese Beekman out of Virginia making his debut. At number 48, we have Arthur Kaluma, who had one of the more massive drops. He dropped 29 spots from our first iteration of this. Then at 49, we have Amari Bailey, who dropped 25 spots. And then rounding out the top 50, we have Ricky Council, the fourth, out of Arkansas. So are you giving up on Arthur Kaluma, or are you kind of holding strong? Because this feels aggressive to me, irregardless of if he maybe hasn't shot the ball nearly as well as we hoped.
Yeah, I think he's having a down year. I still have Kaluma at 29 on my board, so I'm not giving up. I think he's a guy who we were really excited about in the preseason, a guy that a lot of us wrote about and were thinking about and talked a lot about because of what we saw him do in the tournament last year, and thinking, hey, this Creighton team should be strong and he's going to kind of be the engine of that, and it just hasn't happened yet. I think he's just having a bad year, but I don't think we should abandon ship yet. I still think he has a lot of gifts and talents that can lead to him being a very good NBA player. So yeah, I'm going to hold on. I've got him at 29 right now, so I'm not giving up yet.
Yeah, that's about the range that I have him as well. I'm still betting on that guy in the first round. I'm betting on the tools. I obviously the jumper needs work, but I think it's workable. I think he's shown improvements. He's shown these flashes of different ways to create. I am not fully selling my Kaluma stock. I think that he might be a guy that takes a little bit of time, but ultimately he is a strong bet. Bailey, on the other hand, I need to see more of. He was invisible when I saw him live. And obviously I'm not basing my evaluation of him off of one game. And, we know that UCLA is a tough place to play for young players. It's a veteran team. You're going to play through Jaquez, right? Jalen Clark is getting some of that usage. Tiger Campbell is a guy who's going to run the show. So Bailey's in a weird spot because he's kind of a little bit of a lead guard. That's how he grew up, and now he's kind of playing a little bit off ball while still I don't know. Would it shock you if he returned next year?
No, I definitely don't think it would shock me. But at the same time, I almost wonder if it's better for him to go to a different program or somewhere else. I just, watching him play a couple times in person, Obviously, Cronin, he really trusts Jaime Jaquez with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Tiger Campbell, these upperclassmen, he trusts them a lot. And then you see him, he kind of has these plays that are set for Amari Bailey to kind of create and do stuff. And if it doesn't lead to a bucket or lead to a clean look, then you can see Cronin kind of pull that plug pretty quickly, which I can understand, but I also don't think is fair, especially like when they're playing like Long Beach State. Like, just let the kid cook, like, well, what are we talking about here? But I wouldn't be shocked if he went back to school or went somewhere else. I'm still a believer in him. I had him in my top 10 heading into the season. Obviously, he's dropped a ton on my board, but a guy that I still like and I still think can be an NBA type of player. It's just the situation that he's in right now isn't great either. So we shall see.
And it's not like he's been bad. 48% from the floor, 36% from three. Now, low volume both ways. Oddly, 47% from the free throw line, but very low volume there. Can't take too much from it. Positive assist turnover ratio, a 1.2 steals in 26 minutes. There's stuff there with him, and a reason to stay at UCLA would be LA NIL money, but I don't know. I could see his stock going back up and him rising again and kind of leveling out. Maybe not where he started, where his stock was at 28.9 as a guaranteed first rounder, but also maybe not hovering towards the back end of this second round territory. But, this is a fun exercise to do as often as we do it, because I think it really paints this fun picture of where these guys are and how people are feeling about them and how that dictates some of the conversations that we see online. And I think that when we do this next month, this list could potentially look even more different. You've already said your top 5 has shifted massively since the last time we had to hand in our big boards to Nathan to put together the no ceilings board. There's going to be new guys in the lottery. I think GG Jackson's a guy who is, going to be one of the biggest climbers on the next iteration of this, because I think the closer you get to the one spot in that lottery, the more meaningful that jump becomes. So I don't know. This was a fun exercise to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Corey, as you mentioned, we still have a couple left, these left until the end of the season. And some of the guys that we mentioned have fallen off a little bit. Hey man, like, the season's not over yet. Guys like Derek Whitehead and Cam Whitmore and whoever, Amari Bailey, Kaluma, like, there's still an opportunity.
Tyrese Hunter fell off the board.
Bingo. He
was on the first iteration of it, and he exploded for 26 last night. Anything's
possible. There's still time. So as long as there's still time, we're still open is what it is. And so
right.
It was cool to see how these things have shifted, but I'm also excited to see how this season plays out.
Yeah. Now's the time to invest in some of these guys. As the stock price dropped a little bit, if you believe in them, buy in on them. Trust your gut when you do this. This is fun to get this kind of consensus view on prospects and their draft stock. But, if you're getting into evaluating, trust your gut. Believe in what your eyes are telling you. Obviously listen to other people and get their perspective and help that shape your own. Look into the stats and make sure, some of the stats are backing up the eye test, but ultimately believe in your gut. And, if you think that Max Lewis, whose draft stock is at 25, is, one of the top 10 players in this draft, put him in your top 10. That's what we did, and, look, we're not, financial experts, so you shouldn't always take our made up financial advice on these prospects, but sometimes you should. And trusting yourself is something that you should do. Albert, what are you cooking up? What do you got for the people coming up? Where can they find you? All the good stuff as we sign off.
You can find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter is where you can find me. Apologize once again, guys, for my voice. I actually had to grind this one out. This was a little tough for me. My face started getting really red and hot, but I am working on a Jet Howard piece for next week, and he's a guy who is literally rocketing up my board, and he's dangerously high on my board, and I'll release that soon. But a guy that I'm really excited about, and a guy who has intrigued me way more than I was even expecting. I was expecting to like him a lot, but I like him even more than I was expecting to like him. So it's been kind of a shock, but be on the lookout for that.
I can't wait to read that. He's a guy I'm going to see in February, so I'm looking forward to seeing him. Make sure you check out this list at noceilingsnba.com. I'm cooking up who I think I'm going to write about. I think I'm going to do another prospect chemistry piece on a guy who I've been very high on and we've talked about and we've done a preseason episode on. That'll be in 2 weeks from now. But as always, make sure that you rate, review, and share the podcast. 5 stars would be dope. Thank you to everybody who is watching live on YouTube. Make sure you smash the like button before we sign out. And make sure you comment and, who are you buying in on? Who are you selling? All the good stuff. And as always, we will be back next Thursday on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Podcast feed. You can catch us on YouTube anytime. Until that time, we out. Peace.
Peace.